course, making this move in September, 75 basis points. You've said that policymakers need to be cautious after having front-loaded. So does that mean we should not expect another move of 75 basis points? We should expect something smaller in the forthcoming meeting?
It is very clear what is our path in terms of policy decisions. The 75 basis point decision in September was a very clear signal to everyone that the ECB is ready to act, and we will act. But policy decisions must be measured and balanced and a source of stability. We don't see that quite often, unfortunately, recently. And I think Europe and all the decisions that we have been taking for this already long period of inflation and the post-COVID crisis have been balanced, measured, and effective, and that's what it will continue to be.
Hear more conversations like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Gainesville, Bloomberg 99.1.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe for this Friday, the 30th of September in London. Coming up this hour. Springtime growth. The UK economy scrapes into growth in the second quarter as house prices stagnate in September.
Annexation advances. Kremlin presses ahead with Ukrainian land grab despite international condemnation. Liz Truss to curb benefits. Tories fear election wipeout and Putin raises the stakes. Those are today's newspapers, and I'm Leanne Gerrans.
And logging out from Facebook, Meta to reduce staff numbers for the first time.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe on DAB Digital Radio London, Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington DC, Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning from London. I'm Anna Edwards.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. You're listening to Daybreak Europe live on London DAB Digital Radio. It's just gone 8 o'clock, so it's the start of trading here in Europe. The Stock 600 starting the day up by 0.5%. That is in line with what we had been expecting from futures, but of course this is a market that saw a much bigger drop in selling yesterday. The FTSE 100 starting the day flat. The CAC 40 in Paris is up by 0.5%. The FTSE maybe in Italy up by 0.6. In terms of the sectors in the Stock 600 in those first few moments of trading, we are seeing most sectors in positive territory as retail dipping into the start. The biggest gaining group
our job to keep the peace and security. Well, they should be in the morning, man. But when our nightmares become reality,
trading later on Wall Street.
It's time to unleash the Vexcon masters of mayhem.
Okay, so let's do some of our top stories, and in fact we'll start on the pound. It's rallied back close to levels last seen before Kwasi Kwarteng announced sweeping tax cuts a week ago. At one point during Asian trading earlier today, sterling climbed as high as to $1.12, the same level as before the market turmoil began. The Bank of England's bond purchases and the stabilisation of gilt yields were a big factor in soothing fears, according to strategists. The Chancellor is defending his recent mini-budget despite turmoil unleashed in markets.
What we're focusing on is delivering the growth plan and making sure, with things like our energy intervention, that people right across this country are protected. And without growth, you're not going to get the public services. We're not going to generate the income and the tax revenue to pay for the public services that we want to see. And that's why the mini-budget was absolutely essential.
That was the Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng. Separately, The Guardian is reporting that Prime Minister Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng will hold emergency talks today with the head of the Office for Budget Responsibility, the UK's fiscal watchdog, before being presented with a first draft of full fiscal forecasts next week.
Staying with the UK economy, GDP grew by 0.2% in the second quarter, narrowly dodging a recession, but other data less positive. House prices seeing no growth for the first time in more than a year this month. The housing market is now under serious threat as the prospect of soaring interest rates spooks buyers. Lenders start withdrawing mortgage products, dramatically pushing up rates.
President Biden has denounced Russia's plan to absorb occupied regions of Ukraine. Moscow says it plans to sign what it called treaties in Ukraine's east today after annexation votes condemned as illegal by the United Nations. Joe Biden called the votes a sham.
I want to be very clear about this. The United States will never recognize Russia's claims on Ukraine's sovereign territory.
The US President's administration this week said they are planning further sanctions on Russia. Putin may face an early test of his annexation plans in the Donetsk town of Lyman, where Ukrainian, Western and Russian military analysts say Russian units are at risk of being surrounded.
The European Union is about to take its most concrete steps yet to tackle the energy crisis. EU energy ministers meet today to vote on emergency measures to cut power use, plus windfall taxes on energy companies. The bloc has already agreed on a voluntary target to cut gas consumption by 15% after Russia, its biggest supplier, cut shipments following the invasion of Ukraine.
China's factory activity expanded modestly in September while services slowed. Bloomberg's Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
The official PMI rose to 50.1, beating the survey estimate of 49.7. China's recovery continues to be constrained by COVID lockdowns in major cities and by a property slump. The non-manufacturing gauge was 50.6, down from 52.6 in August. China's targeted stimulus hasn't greased the wheels yet, and September was also marred by a 2-week lockdown in Chengdu. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg.
I don't feel like I'm in jail. I feel like I'm in the same
Here in the UK, of course, the week of incredible market turmoil that we've seen, the pound regaining some strength, and we also have had this new set of economic data out showing that in the second quarter the economy did register some very slight growth. Our economics and government correspondent Lizzie Burden is with us in studio. Lizzie, what did we learn from this latest batch of economic data?
Well, there's no recession yet. It's an improvement on the previous estimate, but we are still expecting the slump to start in the third quarter when, of course, we had the National Bank holiday because of the Queen's funeral, and there is also generally a sombre national mood, so that will have weighed on sentiment. We also got data from Nationwide this morning showing that house prices didn't grow at all in September. That's the first time this has happened in more than a year, and it's of course because people are facing not just higher prices but also higher interest rates to combat that, and interest rates are only set to rise because of the Chancellor's fiscal plans, so all of that is likely to outweigh the boost from the stamp duty cut that we had in the budget, and Nationwide says housing affordability is becoming more stretched. Credit Suisse analysts are saying that house prices could fall 10 to 15%, so it's welcome news about the second quarter GDP, along with the pound's recovery, but the recession risks could have a longer term effect.
Just looking at some analysis by Bloomberg Economics for that house price data, saying the house price stall reflects the calm before the imminent storm. You've talked about the sombre mood in the country then, as a result of some of these headwinds. Sombre mood, no doubt, ahead of the Conservative Party conference, which starts this weekend, Lizzie.
Worse than sombre, I think it's pretty alarming for the Tory party. There's a poll out from YouGov by the Times overnight saying that the Labour Party's now got a 33-point lead over the Tories. It's the biggest any political parties had in 20 years, and again it's in response to this budget. Kwasi Kwarteng behind the scenes is having to plead with Tory MPs to get behind his policies, and what we're hearing is that many of them are calling on him to resign less than a month into the job, just to give Truss the political cover to reverse these tax cuts. But she is not doing that. Her, Kwarteng and the Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch have been out guns blazing saying that the plans are going to boost growth. So it's a really uncomfortable scene setter for Tory conference in Birmingham this weekend. And what's even more awkward is that Tory heavyweights like the former Chancellor Rishi Sunak aren't going to turn up. He's going to stay in his constituency because he says he's going to give her space.
Lizzie, what does this all mean for the economic plans that the government laid out only a week ago, can you believe? We had Paul Mortimer-Lee, the economist, on with us earlier in the programme, and he was saying the UK is a canary in the mine. for things that could go wrong elsewhere.
I don't know if you're watching the second season of Industry, but we're not supposed to use that phrase apparently as financial journalists. So I won't. But Liz Truss frankly doesn't have a lot of room to manoeuvre. If she backpedals at this point, she's going to look like she's lost credibility. If she carries on, she risks more turbulence in financial markets. And yes, the pound has recovered so far, but Bank of America strategists have said that pound-dollar parity is in sight by the end of the year. What she could do is try to regain some fiscal credibility by cutting spending to try and balance the books. Our economists at Bloomberg Economics say that she'd have to go deeper than George Osborne in the austerity years if she were to do that. So that's very politically difficult in a cost of living crisis when you're cutting taxes for the richest. She may get some ideas from the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, when she meets the boss today along with Kwasi Kwarteng. That's reported by The Guardian. It's a highly unusual